This video is sponsored by One Page Rules, and there'll be more about them later on. Hello Bitzbox, this is Craig from Bitzbox.co.uk here, and this video is all about 10 things that I've learnt during my first year of 3D printing. So yeah, mostly this list is about resin 3D printing, although there's a little bit about FDM as well. So I now own 4 resin 3D printers at the time of recording this, and one FDM printer. We do print a lot of resin stuff for work now, which is really awesome. So yeah, over the course of the last year and a bit that I've been doing this, there are a few things that I've learned, and hopefully this video will be useful for any of you who are thinking about getting into 3D printing yourself. Maybe even some of you who are already 3D printing as well might find some tips here. So this is what I've learned. I'm sure there are many more other things. And if you are quite big into 3D printing yourself and you have some more tips or things that you've learned, then please do feel free to leave them down in the comments for everyone else. So yeah, let's get straight into the list with number 1. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is supports. It's very important that resin miniatures have supports. Any sort of overhangs, things that might sort of be floating in the air as the printer prints them, certainly need support or they just will fail. So yeah, a lot of the slicer software will have auto supports. I use Bitzbox, and I know not a lot of people like the auto supports on Bitzbox, and they're okay. They are certainly the sort of minimum that you need to support a miniature, and I'm sure in a lot of cases they probably do work. I always like to add extra supports, especially around the sort of lower parts of the miniatures and any sort of overhangs. Bitzbox is really good for showing you where supports are needed the most. It doesn't seem to want to add them all the time with the auto supports though, which is a bit strange, because it sort of knows where they need to be, but it doesn't always put them there, which, yeah, I find is a bit odd. So yeah, it sort of gives you the bare minimum, so it's worth sort of knowing, and one thing I've sort of learned is where you sort of need them the most. Sort of the darker red areas on Bitzbox are normally where you need supporting the most. And yeah, it's sort of something that you just get used to knowing, and yeah, it's always better to have too many supports than not enough, but obviously don't add too many that they're hard to remove. So I like to add a lot of extra light supports because they come off quite easily, and a few mediums for strength as well. I don't use the heavies too much. Another thing to talk about on supports is pre-support stuff. So a lot of great companies out there now offer their stuff pre-supported, which is absolutely amazing. 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100, they are absolutely fine, but don't think because something is auto-supported that is 100% not going to fail, because that can happen, and there's different reasons why supports might fail. It's not just if they're not supported as well as they could be. Other things can come into play, of course, but yeah, usually things are pre-supported really well. I don't think I've had much issues with anything that's pre-supported myself, which is really good. But yeah, just keep that in mind though, because obviously the settings and printers and resins that other people might use to test their pre-supports might be different to yours, so other factors could come into play. But yeah, something to be mindful of. But once you sort of know what you're looking for, again with like having a lot of supports in sort of lower areas and overhangs, you'll find that a lot of places do this really well. Number 2 is all about hollowing prints. So yeah, you can actually hollow out the miniatures, so they use less resin, which is really cool, and obviously less weight, so your supports can hold them a lot better. So obviously, the less weight what's put on the supports, the less likely they're going to fail. This is something I didn't realise how easy it was to do. I knew you could do it, but I didn't realise it was how easy. So when I printed out little Walter White here, he is just solid, and yeah, I could have hollowed him out, and he'd have been a bit lighter, and he would have used less resin, but I do really like him now. It's so cool. Sometimes you want solid stuff, and I think something maybe this size probably isn't too much of an issue, but there were other bits, sort of larger pieces that I had fail because they were quite solid and quite heavy, where if I'd have hollowed them back then, they would have been fine. Yeah, you must always had some holes though, because obviously the resin inside doesn't cure properly, so you need as much of that just to leak out of these holes as possible. Otherwise, they can crack and break after a while, which is not what you want. That's happened to me with something that I downloaded, which I didn't realise was already hollow, so I didn't add no holes to it, and then after a while that did sort of break, and I might have it around here somewhere. Let me just have a look. I might just throw it away, so yeah, never mind. Number 3. So number 3 is just all about what sort of equipment you need to buy in addition to your printers and your resin. Now, I done a whole video on this, but there are a couple of things that I would like to add to that, and one of them is screen protectors. Oh boy, if I had them from day one, I could have saved myself a lot of headaches. Yeah, sort of a screen protector for a tablet, whack that down over your LCD. So if you get any resin leaks or anything like that, they do not affect the LCD, because a Lego are really good. I started with a Lego, the Mars 2 Pro, which is a awesome printer that I recommend as a starter one, although the Mars 3 has been absolutely amazing. So if you've got a choice between them two, go for the Mars 3, I would say now. But the Mars 2 Pro is still absolutely brilliant. However, I've had to replace screens on both of them, just from bits of resin get on the screen. It doesn't take a lot, and it is quite a bit of a pain to get off. You can get it off without damaging the screen, but you have to be so careful. It takes a lot of time. Elegoo are really good because they will replace the screen for free within the first 6 months, I believe, which they had to do on both my machines, which kind of sucked. If I'd just had screen protectors down, there would have been no issue. So yeah, screen protectors on all my printers now. Although saying that, I haven't got one on the Mars 3 yet, which is a bit naughty of me, but I find the FEP on that is actually a lot stronger, so fingers crossed we won't get no issues. But yeah, I will put one on very soon. And another product that I want to add to that list is a heat gun. So I use water washable resin, and I will talk about that a bit more later on. I'm going to talk about sort of washing and curing resin in a bit more detail. But yeah, one thing that I've learned is it is a lot better to have your prints as dry as possible before you cure them, and a heat gun is really good for that. Not only that though, if you struggle sometimes to get your prints off the build plate, then giving them a blast with a heat gun will soften up the resin a little bit and make them easier to remove. So yeah, really handy, a really good investment. Number 4, we are talking about temperature. So ideally you want to be printing just above room temperature, around sort of 20 degrees C. It's not always possible, and if you are below that, it doesn't mean you're going to get failed prints. The room that we print in does drop below room temperature, especially at this time of year. So we are more likely to get failures, but I have a little electric heater set up just to warm the air around that area, and that does help quite a lot. Like I say, you can print in lower temperatures, but I don't recommend it. You can get failures from it. But yeah, anything sort of around room temperature and a little bit higher, certainly no issues there at all. So yeah, it's just something to be mindful of, because I know with the smell from resin, and some people will get out of the way, so they might do it in their garage or even their shed. Just try and keep that area just a bit warmer than it would be normally, and you'll be good to go. Again, talking about the fumes though, I've found not been too much of an issue for us. I know the Elegoo printers that we use, the Mars 2 Pro, is really good at keeping the fumes at bay, and because I use the water washable stuff, I don't think that has as strong a smell to it as other resins. I might be wrong, but I certainly haven't found the smell to be too strong from that one myself. So yeah, just like I say, just keep the temperature sort of around sort of room temperature and above, and you'll be absolutely fine on that front. Number 5. So yeah, be prepared for an early printing spree. Lots of STL downloading and lots of printing. That is what's going to happen early on. It's what happened to me. It's what I'm sure has happened to a lot of others. Because it's a new toy, you want to play with it loads. But yeah, try and really print stuff that you just really want. Don't go just printing stuff for the sake of it. Because we've probably all got piles of shame, and it's very easy to add to it with 3D printers. So yeah, try not to do that. I've still got quite a lot of stuff from my early prints that just haven't even gone anywhere near a paintbrush, so shockingly. So yeah, really, you can download the files and you've got them forever, unless you lose them somehow. So yeah, really just print them when you need them, basically. There's lots of awesome Patrons as well, and you may be tempted just to jump on those different Patrons. I know I did. Most of them I'm still with, mind you, and if you can afford to do that, then brilliant. Obviously, if you can't, then pick and choose which Patrons you sign up to very carefully but so many of them represent good value for money, definitely. They offer so much per month. And that brings us nicely into a segue to this video's sponsor, who is One Page Rules. So, One Page Rules emailed us and sent us over these awesome Beastmen miniatures for us to try out this month. So these are part of their monthly Patreon subscription, where they offer sci-fi and fantasy miniatures. So yeah, this month they have some of their Beastmen and Centaurs, as well as some awesome stuff for their Robot Legions as well. Definitely check them out. They also offer simple rule sets to use all their miniatures, and they all come pre-supported at 28mm scale. And yeah, it's the second time they've sent us over some stuff, and everything they sent us, we've just been blown away by. They are really highly detailed and really awesome. So thank you so much, One Page Rules. You can find them at onepagerules.com, and we'll put a link down in the description below. So yeah, big thanks to them once again, and let's get back in the video with number 6. So number 6 is all about washing and curing your miniatures. Now when I first started, I was using a little ultrasonic cleaner and one of them little UV nail lamps. And yeah, while they're okay to start with, getting a proper wash and cure station really helped. Now I know a lot of people just like to sort of dunk their miniatures in like IPA. If you're not using water washable stuff, give it a bit of a swirl around, and yeah, I'm sure that's fine. Isopropyl alcohol is actually really good for cleaning miniatures, a lot better than water. So if you're using water washable, I certainly recommend you do need to wash them a little bit more than you would if you were using IPA. Wash and cure stations are really good. I've heard some people say not to use wash and cure stations for water washable, but I always have, and it's been absolutely fine, so I don't know. I recently switched to the Mercury X, I want to say it is, from Elegoo, where they have a separate wash and a separate cure station, and this has been absolutely brilliant. Not only does it save me time, but they're so much larger as well, and they wash for prints really brilliantly. So I highly recommend getting something like that, and it just makes the job so much easier. One thing that really put me off and sort of delayed me getting into 3D printing was all the cleanup and stuff like that, the mess and the smells, and having a wash and cure station just makes it so much easier. You just take them off the printer, stick them in the wash, press a button, leave them for a few minutes, take them out, dry them, and cure them. And there really is just nothing more to it than that. And using water washable stuff just means there's less chemicals to use as well. So I quite like water washable. I know some people don't, and I'm sure I could probably get better results using isopropyl alcohol. And obviously that does evaporate a lot faster, so there's less time between prints being washed and dried and cured. When I first got into this, actually, I wasn't giving them enough time to dry, and then you end up with these sort of white little specks on your prints. This comes from water. So if you are using isopropyl alcohol, I've said it enough, then you don't really get that issue. So if you are using water washable, then make sure they are dry, and this is where the heat gun again comes in very handy. And yeah, you'll just have much better quality prints. And yes, since switching to the newer wash and cure station, I've actually had better quality of the prints. So if you've ordered stuff from us in the past of 3D printing, and you might notice they've been a bit sort of glossy, that's a result from the previous wash and cure thing, maybe not washing them as well, or me not letting them dry as long before I cure them. I'm finding this new machine a lot better, so yeah. The quality of our prints are certainly improved just from having that alone. Number 7 is all about troubleshooting. So another thing that might put people off 3D printing is seeing all the fails. You go on the 3D printing groups, every day there'll be people saying, oh, my print failed, why? And that could put you off. You might think, oh my god, there's failures all the time. But just remember, for every person who is asking for advice or troubleshooting advice, there's thousands of us who are printed flawlessly with no issues, and we just aren't posting about it every day. You know, it's like you hear about plane crashes, but you don't hear about all the planes who landed safely. It's that sort of thing. So don't think because there's a lot of people posting about failed prints and stuff like that, as that it happens all the time. Of course, they do happen from time to time, and learning how to troubleshoot them is certainly something that I've learned over the last year. And to be honest, only 3 things really sort of come into play, and that's the level of the build plate, the condition of the FEP sheet, and the temperature, really. Oh, and of course, four things out of the three, the supports, of course. And we talked about supports at the beginning of this video, so these three are sort of in addition to that. So yeah, earlier on in the video, I did talk about printing in different temperatures, and yeah, so if you print in too cold a temperature, you are more likely to get failures. So that's something to be mindful of. Slowing the lift speed down, and also I find heating up the build plate a little bit with our trusty heat gun has helped as well. So that's something to be mindful of. You can print in lower temperatures, but yeah, don't really recommend it. And yeah, another thing is the condition of the FEP. The FEP sheets do wear out over time. You just can't help that. And as they start to get looser, things don't stick to them as well. So you might things don't stick to the build plate as well, I should say. They don't come off the FEP as easy, so they might stick to the FEP. That's really annoying, because that just makes the whole print fail. When we print out loads of bits, we always keep them all separate. So if the odd one or two gets stuck to the FEP, at least the rest will print and they'll be fine. So that's something to think about as well if you're printing lots of little stuff. Although that said as well, if they're all connected, there might be more chance of them coming off the FEP. So yeah, it's all about sort of experimentation, really. A little bonus thing, FEP sheets are a pain in the backside to change. I absolutely hate changing them. I've actually bought spare trays just to put off having to change the FEP as long. So when the FEP wears out on one, I can put a new tray in, and then while that one's being used, that gives me plenty of time to change the FEP on the other one. So, I mean, they're not very expensive, so it is worth doing. But yeah, really hate changing the FEP. There's so many screws, and they're a pain. But it will make all the difference once you've got a nice FEP, nice new FEP sheet in there. So yeah, once you sort of know how to troubleshoot, what to look for, then you're good to go. You'll get the odd fails, but you'll know what to do. So, and leveling the build plate is another one that I found I was doing quite a lot earlier on, but maybe when I didn't need to. Now that I've sort of finding out and learning more, I think maybe most of my issues were probably earlier on, were probably more to do with the condition of the FEP rather than leveling the build plate. With my Mars 3, I've only leveled it when I first got it, and I still haven't had to re-level it, which is really awesome. So yeah, but that's something to check as well. But I find most cases the build plate, once it's level, it normally stays quite level for a while. So number 8 is all about looking after your resin. So when I first got into this, after I had a print, I would wipe down all the build plate, and if I wasn't going to use the printer again, I'll empty all the resin back into the bottle. And you don't need to do that. You really don't need to do that. You can keep resin sitting in the vat for quite a while, but if you do that, what you want to do is when you go back to the printer, just give it a good stir. Just with like an old spatula or something, you get these sort of little plastic yellow spatulas with a lot of printers. I normally just give it a big stir with that, and then you are good to go again. Speaking of stirring as well, resin likes to be stirred, not shaken, so James Bond wouldn't be too much into this hobby, but so when you get a bottle of resin, sort of swirl it around rather than shake it up and down, and that'd be much better for your resin. So yeah, that's something to be mindful of. So in at number 9, it's cheap per print, but obviously it's quite addictive as well, so the price can creep up on you, so be prepared for that. Don't look at a printer for like £250 and think, oh, I can print all this stuff for £250. You know, you still got to buy resin, you have to buy gloves, lots of other little things. As I said, I had a video on all the other things that are helpful. Again, you need something to wash it with and cure it with. So just be mindful if you are getting into this. Try and total up the cost of everything, and realise that the resin, whilst you get miniatures cheap for what they are, you've still got to pay like £30–40 sometimes just for a litre bottle of resin. You can get so much miniatures out of that, of course, hundreds of pounds worth, if you're buying resin miniatures of the same size. So, you know, it's still good value for money, but, you know, you still do spend money doing this hobby as well. And of course, if anything goes wrong, you have to buy replacement parts if you can't get them sent out for free. So, yeah, just be mindful of that. Of course, there's a lot of effort involved in doing this as well. They take a long time to print and stuff like that. So, you know, it's one of them things where there is a trade-off. But yeah, I absolutely love doing it, as you can probably tell from all the 3D printing content that's been on the channel over the last year. And then number 10, just a little bit all about what I've learned from using the filament printers. So a couple of things here. Firstly, they can be a right pain in the backside to level, and they really need to be leveled, as does resin printers, but resin printers are so easy to level. You can literally level a resin printer in a matter of seconds, whereas these ones do take a bit of work to get spot on, but once you do, they will print beautifully. So that can be a pain. I've replaced some parts on my printer to make it keep as level as possible for as long as possible, and they're certainly helping. Another thing is there are different types of plastic that goes in them, and PLA is the most common, and that is the easiest to work with. I did accidentally buy some PTEG and not realise, and then tried to print stuff using just the same settings as a PLA, and that was a bit disastrous. Even using some of the built-in PTEG settings on Cura still wasn't too successful. So this big house thing that I've started building, there are some gaps that I need to fill as well, but I've started sort of building and painting this. And I don't know how well you can see on the chimney, there's little bits there. This is done in PTG, where it's not as smooth as like the brickwork there. It's a lot stronger though, so that is one bonus of that material. So yeah, that'll need a little bit more cleanup, but I'm not too fast. I'm going to have little bits of foliage and whatnot on there to cover up any imperfections and gaps and whatnot. But yeah, you can print some really large stuff on the FDM printers. Again, like you can appreciate sort of the size of this building. This is from Printable Scenery. And yeah, it's really awesome. About 100 hours worth of printing on that thing. They are slow. They are a lot slower than resin printers, but you can print some really large stuff for really cheap. It's only about sort of £15 for a reel, and the equivalent of resin would be a lot more expensive. So yeah, they obviously have their place. Resin is so much better for miniatures, and the filament ones are better for more generic objects and terrain and stuff like that. So that's just 10 things off the top of my head that I've learned over the last year from 3D printing. I'm sure there's other little things as well. If you have any questions, then please do feel free to leave them down in the comments. I will answer every single one. If you had any advice for people who might be wanting to get into 3D printing yourself, or anything that you've learned, then again, please do feel free to leave them down below. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up. That will mean so much to us. And feel free to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, you are brilliant. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all again in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. You can also click that bell icon to be notified when a new video has gone live on this channel. On the screen now are 2 more videos that you may wish to check out, and a link to our Patreon page also. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.